Hello guys and welcome to Mark Shrimp Tanks. Today we are going to smash our way through all the shrimp parameters, all the abbreviations you can think of: pH, TDS, GH, KH. We're going to break through all of them today and we're going to explain what they all mean. Coming right up. Also guys, if you wouldn't mind, right, if you are new to my channel and you want to see more content like this where I showcase all my beautiful shrimp every single week, I do lots of live streams, etc. Then hit that subscribe button, bell notification and like the video, right, to never miss another thing I post. Also guys, in the comment section below, let me know what you thought those abbreviations meant, because all is not what it seems. So let's start with pH. pH means potential of hydrogen, right? And more specifically, it means the potential concentration of hydrogen ions. Sometimes as well, it is wrongly called potential hardness, which is a similar name, but it's not quite the right name. By the way, this was this system was invented by a Danish guy called S.P. Sorensen. I think a way you guys will understand this even better is if I actually draw it. Now, I'm not well known for my drawing, but we shall give this a go, right? So this is the pH scale, right? Potential of hydrogen scale, right? So at bang in the middle here, you would have a 7 pH, right? And on either side, it would be acidic or it would be alkaline, right? And then you have, on either side of the 7 pH, the number would go down, right? So you'd have 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then up here you'd have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, right? So this is the scale, right? So here is the neutral, the N for the neutral. This is the acidic side, and this is the alkalinity side, right? And basically the way the acidity works in this, right? So you have your hydrogen, your H up here, your hydrogen. The more hydrogen ions this has, the more acidic it is, right? So that's how we're able to get a measurement from it, right? And a lot of the test kits that we have for measuring pH, they're dyes in the test kits that are sensitive to the amount of ions that are in the dye, right? So this is where they change color. Isn't that amazing? Right, so as you can see, I am not the best at drawing, but I can basically explain what I'm trying to say, right? So the way this works as well, guys, is pH is logarithmic. And what that means is, just say down here, look, we have, a good example would be 3, right? Or 5, let me say 5. Right, 5 is 10 times more acidic than 6, right? And logarithmic means it's like the times table, 10 times 10 times, right? So then the next one would be 4, which is 10 times more acidic than 5, right? So that's 10 again, right? But this is the interesting part here, is where I said it's like the 10 times table. 4 pH is 100 times, because it's 10 times 10, than 6. Does that make sense? Right, so you're going down like a times table all the time. That's how pH works. And I hope that's explained it basically in my layman's terms of understanding of what pH actually is. Okay, right guys, just before we go on to GH, KH and TDS, I think it's worthwhile explaining to you guys as well what you can do with pH to help lower it. Right, if you use like RO water, like I do over there, you can see away in the corner, it's very easy to manipulate the water when you use RO water, right? But there are other ways to do it as well, right? And one of the ways I know of is to filter water through peat. Peat has been used for eons and eons in the fish keeping industry as a water softener, right? And that's what it's good for. You pass any kind of water through peat and it will soften it quite a bit. The other ways you could do it as well is, I don't really have it in my tanks here. I do have the odd bit, but you can add bogwood to your tanks. I have bits of cholla wood here, cola, shola, whatever you want to call it. I do have bits of bogwood, but my saltwater tank goes so well, it's encompassed it all, right? So that is one of the ways you can lower it as well. One of the other ways, which is quite common in the aquascaping world to lower pH, look at this tank, isn't it beautiful? One of the other ways is by injecting CO2. Now CO2 can be a bit tricky when it comes to shrimp, so it's not something I advise people do. I don't advise you adding CO2 to a shrimp tank just because there's too many variables that can happen and go wrong with CO2 that makes it a little bit unpredictable. And then of course you can add things like leaf litter. I like adding lots and lots of leaves to my tanks. And of course I have my own Indian almond tree bush in my house, so that's where I get all my leaves from here. And while we're talking about lowering it, we should also talk about raising the pH, right? So a few of the ways I know of raising pH as well is by, a really basic one is by using an inert substrate like this. This is sand, if you have gravel, etc. These typically won't raise the pH on their own, but they make the environment a little bit, I don't know what you call it, neutral. So anything else that you put in the tank, it makes it very easy for it to manipulate the pH, right? So in a lot of my tanks here I have an activated soil. Right, so here it makes it very, very difficult for me to manipulate the pH in this type of tank. But this is not why I have this here, right? So that is a different thing. But it's just to show you, like if you have a sand-based tank or a gravel-based tank, anything that is in there, it's very easy for you to manipulate your pH. And I'm going to continue this little theme of manipulating the pH when we get to KH, right? Because KH plays an important part in manipulating pH. Right guys, let's get on to GH. GH is basically means general hardness, right? And for us, when we measure general hardness, we're looking for the amount of calcium and magnesium that is present in the water, right? And there's different scales. There's a German GH hardness scale as well, which we'll go into in a second. But I just want to talk to you guys basically about what we use, right? Because I use RO water in my tanks, and it's quite interesting, right? I'm going to show you these as well. We have B shrimp GH buffer here, and we have salted B GH buffer there as well. We also have the B salt GH plus from Shrimp King, right? And all of these will all have calcium in them and magnesium, right? So that is basically what raises your GH, your general hardness, right? There's also a German general hardness scale, right, which is a little bit hard for me to remember off the top of my head. Just for roughly, to give you a rough example, 100 parts per million would be soft water, would be very soft water. 150 would be like medium soft water. That's not exactly, I'll probably put a little diagram up here so you guys can see what exactly that is. Okay, but that is what GH is. 1, 2, 3, right, let's get on to KH. KH is carbonate hardness. Right? Carbonates make up the alkalinity level of the pH range, right? So to raise your KH, basically, you're going to add carbonates, right? So a really, really simple one that most of you guys will know about to raise your KH is to use bicarbonate soda. Guys, many a time I've been to the shop, picked up baking soda, baking pulver in Norway it's called, baking powder, walked to the shop, went home and thought, I've bought the wrong thing. Right, so baking soda is something that you can use to raise your KH. Right, and why is KH important? In a soft water tank, KH isn't so important, right, because you don't want a KH reading in a soft B shrimp tank. Right, but if you have Neocaridina type shrimp that live on, just say, sand or gravel, right, it is quite important that you add a KH value to your water, because if you don't, there's nothing in the water, there's no soil, there's no substrate to buffer the actual water parameters in the tank, right? So that can lead to quite a lot of problems. It can lead to catastrophic pH swings. Remember we were talking about the logarithmic pH scale, where like it's basically working down in times 10 times 10 times 10 all the time, right? If you don't have a KH value, you will get swings in that pH acidity, right? Which is, as we talked about before, can be very, very lethal to shrimp tanks, right? So it's important that you add something back in. Again, we talked about adding bicarbonate soda. You can actually add other things as well. There's stuff like limestone, sandstone. There's lots and lots of different types of stone that will add a basic pH value back to your tank. But baking soda is one of the very simple ones, and it's also very cheap, right? Please don't quote me on this as well, but I think the measurement to raise your baking soda levels in your tank, I think the measurement if you were using 4 or 5 litres of water would be something like 1/8 of a teaspoon. Now that's how small it is to raise your pH value up to between 2 and 4. Between 2 and 4, probably about that, right? But this is something that you have to measure yourself. Right? I use baking soda. I have a little glass jar somewhere. It's over there. And I use the little white spoons, and I put so much in, and then I get my pH test kit out, and I measure it in the water, right? So the way I've done it for all of my tanks that I need to do it with in this room is to have a little scoop like this. We just talked about it right there. A little scoop like this into that container, right? So I fill that container up, I make my RO water myself, I put in my normal buffer over there, but this is all meant for soft water, right? So this is where I've had to add my pH value, right, to the actual tanks, right? And for me, I have to put in 5 of these little spoons, right, to get a 2 pH reading on all of my tanks from that bucket. All of the tanks that are Neocaridina or Tangerine Tiger. Some of the ones I have down here are in harder water. By the way, I'm also trying my Orange Eye Blue Tigers on the same thing as well. Even though they're on an active soil, I think they might require a slight pH reading, right? Because I wasn't having the best breeding success with them, but I am now. They're breeding again, right? I have lots of babies in there. The other thing as well, guys, which is quite important for us with tanks like this is snails, etc. You can have quite the bio load of snails in a tank and not realise it, right? And if you don't provide them with any kind of pH, basically what I'm saying, guys, if you don't give them some kind of carbonates, because this is what a lot of the snail shell is actually made of, carbonates. It's the same way you guys that have reefs, coral reefs, they need carbonates to form their shell or to form the coral, right? So it's important that if you have lots of snails in the tank that you give them some carbonates, because what will happen is if you don't, is the shells will be weak, eroded, and they will crumble, right? So that is basically what pH is. Did I do well? Okay, so we are nearly at the final third of this little water parameter video, right? So next we have TDS. TDS means total dissolved solids. For the longest time I thought it meant total dissolved salts, and technically it's not wrong calling it total dissolved salts because TDS does measure total dissolved salts, but it also measures organics as well, right? So it's not 100% correct to say TDS means total dissolved salts. It measures solids in the tanks, it measures everything, right? So that is what it means. Okay, so now that you know what it means, I think it's also important, guys, that you understand the importance of it in a shrimp room and the environment that you use it, right? Because a TDS pen is pretty useful if you use RO water, like I use, right? I make all my own water, and I can make it to any specification I want because I use a TDS pen like this. I have a couple of them. I use my latest one, my TDS 4 pen, and I also have some of the older TDS 3 ones as well. And it's important that you guys understand that there is a difference between using TDS in an RO setup compared to tap water, right? Because as I just said, when you use a TDS pen in an RO setup, you're making your own water, right? You are like the god, if you will, of your little environment. You make whatever your water whatever way you like, right? But when it comes to tap water, it is different. I often read this in my groups and my comments and stuff on the comments below on YouTube, where people will say they use a TDS pen in tap water, right? And the thing with using a TDS pen in tap water is it's not reliable at all. It's really not reliable because you do not know what is in the tap water. It could be anything, right? So, as I said before, when I use RO water, I'm able to put in my calcium and my magnesium, so I know exactly what's going into my water. There could be all manner of organics in tap water when you're using a TDS pen, It will read nitrates, ammonia, anything basically that's in there. It probably reads like chemical reactions like chlorine, fluoride, all that kind of stuff, right? It probably can detect them. That is how that works, and it converts it into parts per million for us to use, right? So as a general guide, on my tanks here I use roughly the scale of 150 to 250 on all my tanks. 250 for Neocaridina, 150 for all my saltwater shrimp. Okay, so now that we've talked about what TDS actually is, how do you go about manipulating it? Well, as I've said to you before, I have my own way for doing it with RO. But for most of you guys, it will be a case of how do you lower TDS. A lot of my tanks, you will have the odd tank where the TDS climbs too high and you will have to lower it. Basically, for you guys that have an RO machine, it's pretty easy to lower TDS because all you're doing is you're going to do a water change and you're going to put the new fresh water back into the tank. But for you guys that have tap water only, no RO at all, you can run into all kinds of problems and not knowing what you're adding back to the tank, because every time you do a water change or you top up your tank, you're adding total dissolved solids back in, right? And then they'll start to build up. So if you're on tap water, the best thing I can suggest that you guys do is find yourself a source of RO water. I'm not drunk, by the way, I just stumbled a little bit. Find yourself a source of RO water or distilled water, something like that. You can even use rainwater as well, but just make sure that you use rainwater that has been filtered a little bit through active carbon, right? Because the atmosphere is not as clean as you think. A lot of people might think they collect rainwater, it's come straight from the sky, there's no pollution in it. Well, that's not technically true, right? Because all those rain particles have to come through the atmosphere and they have to travel through dust and all manner of things, right? So when they hit the roofs or whatever you use to collect your rainwater, make sure you use an activated carbon type filter in there as well. Maybe a little bit floss to take out the dust. You might also, if you're unfortunate, you might also get some acid rain, right? So that is something that you have to watch out for. Also, don't collect your rainwater off any roof that has tar on it, because that you will probably kill your shrimp. There'll be stuff in there that is used to like preserve that type of roof. Tar is probably quite toxic in an aquatic environment, like our ones anyway. So avoid that as much as you can. I would also personally avoid using stuff that has come off a metal roof as well, just in case. You never know what's going to come off this roof, because some of the stuff is galvanized, a lot of it will be galvanized. There's probably things on there that will hurt your shrimp as well, right? So bear that in mind. Only try and collect your rainwater from places that you know are safe. So that wraps it up, my video for my water parameters. I hope that was a good enough explanation, because I'm not always the best at explaining my words, but if you understand all of those basic things to do with your GH, your KH, your TDS, right? And if you understand this stuff, then you will get on so much better in the shrimp keeping world. I haven't mentioned temperature, right, guys, because temperature is just one of those things where you say 22 degrees, 24 degrees, and that is it. Right? So I haven't mentioned that in this video specifically because every type of shrimp is slightly different, right? You will have Sulawesi shrimp that need, some of them will be like 28 degrees Celsius, some of them will be 24, right? So it's not really worth my while saying it in a video that temperature wise you need to be A this, B this, C this, because it's not the same. Right? So learn your shrimp species, learn what they need to live in, work your environment to them, and you will be so happy. They will be so happy as well, and you will see as well when they start to breed. Okay, so hope you enjoyed today's video, guys. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe if you haven't already. Give me a big thumbs up. Also, this is kind of like a repeat of what my live stream was about on Saturday. I thought I'd put this into a video as well, just because I probably won't mention half the stuff in my stream that I have done in this video, and a lot of people don't want to watch the live streams either. So hope you enjoyed today's video. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. That was my video on water parameters for shrimp. Happy shrimp keeping.